If we really want to be prepared for AI, then there are a number of things that we need to do. They are
Theo Blackwell,
the Chief Digital Officer for the City of London.
He's had 20 years experience across public and private sector.
I'm CDO of London, which has 32 boroughs, each with their own independent IT and innovation plays. At the moment, to retrofit London will cost, and I think this is a conservative figure, at least 100 billion. 1 in every 5 people in our city is either employed by the creative industry or employed in a job linked to the creative industry. Biggest immediate threat about people's copyrighted works being exploited by AI products. We've got deepfakes.
I am not Morgan Freeman.
We've got very easy to create and manipulate products and services. If the public, who are becoming increasingly aware that a deepfake is easy to do, think that it could be done, then where's their trust in all news sources?
What's Sadiq Khan like as a boss?
He is
the Alfie Whattam podcast.
Theo Blackwell.
Hello.
Awesome. So you're London's Chief Digital Officer.
I am.
That's a cool title, man.
It is, yeah.
For those that don't know, what does London's CDO do?
So my day-to-day is advising the Mayor on improving connectivity, how we join up data as a city, how we improve collaboration and do open innovation, also deal with things like data ethics, and also some wider issues over IT and smart cities.
Okay, cool. You're 6 years in now?
Yes, I am. Yeah, 6 years.
Okay, cool. You've got a bit of a different background though, because you weren't like a technologist or a developer, were you? No. So it's interesting. Like, how does a non-technical person become London's Chief Digital Officer? That's not like meant in any offence as well.
No. It's a good question. So my background's both in the public and private sector. I worked in the video games industry. I also worked in local government for 15 years. And one of the principal jobs that I undertake is how we bring local authorities together. Now, there's 2 aspects to that. One is the ability to talk to local authorities and understand their language. And the other bit is to assemble a team and capability here at City Hall, which we didn't have before Sadiq appointed me, that would, have the proper data, technology, design people that we need to make those conversations with local government and the tech sector work effectively. So, in a sense, I've been able to create the team of the people with all of the skills that we need.
So for you, it's about vision, it's about strategy, it's about leadership. It's less about being able to code or something. No,
my coding's pretty rusty. I
me
must say.
Too.
Yeah.
So you are been working for Sadiq for the full term, right? So he's been the mayor ever since you started the position.
That's right. Yeah, in 2017.
Okay. What's Sadiq Khan like as a boss?
Oh, that's a really good question. He is a really well-read politician in the sense that I've worked with other politicians before who, and there's probably one famous example of a politician who is renowned for not reading their briefs. Sadiq is the opposite. I won't say, but something to do with London in the past. But Sadiq is, you put something in front of Sadiq and he'll read it. With detail and ask really important and sincere questions of it. And that is actually really refreshing for working in local government, refreshing and I think important because it holds me to account. And also I'm confident that there's someone I can work with who's across the things, often quite technical and complex things that I'm working on myself.
Okay. You have been in the UK for a long time, right? But you are American.
I am,
originally, right?
Yeah,
so
you've done your research.
I always do research, man. You were naturalised in 1999.
Yeah.
Okay. So there seems to be a lot of, in my opinion, a almost lack of ambition in the UK as opposed to like Silicon Valley when it comes to building big tech projects and companies. We've seen this from like the size of funding rounds to the way that CEOs are treated in the press. And just recently with the Las Vegas Sphere, for example, I know we were talking about doing one in London, and as far as I know, it's not going ahead or something like that. I was speaking to Tom Blumfield, who the founder of Monzo, and he left London to go to the Valley because of this sort of perception and this reason. What do you think? Do you think like London has got a smaller mindset when it comes to thinking about building big tech moonshots? Like, what's your take on that?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I mean, I think it's different.
And how do we fix it as well, if there is a problem?
Yeah, but I just think it's different.
Yeah.
I think that there is a certain mentality of Silicon Valley. I felt it when I went there just after I became CDO. There is a drive and an energy that you get over there, which comes with lots of people who are kind of fairly like-minded, being in the same place. We have lots of like-minded people here in the same place in London. They might have slightly different pursuits than sort of tech builders, but we have huge specialisms in areas such as life sciences and in fintech and in the creative industries. So I don't think, I always, it's always the case that politicians, and particularly the current Prime Minister, is getting obsessed by unicorns and size. But I think we need to look at the whole picture, because what we have here is just a vast and kind of interacting ecosystem that's grown over the last 20 years, which is truly exciting. Not to say that there aren't problems, because I do think there is a challenge with British entrepreneurialism. There isn't so much that, the government seems to point the finger as like there must be structural problems standing in the way of companies becoming unicorns. I mean, the fact is that quite a lot of entrepreneurs have chosen exit themselves to those US unicorns. So is the challenge within people who say, actually, I don't want to build a unicorn, I'd rather sell my company? I don't know. But we certainly have great strengths here in London,
There's definitely a lot less unicorns in the UK, right, as opposed to the US. Now, I don't know. I agree with you. I don't think it's some kind of system or structure that's been put in place, but it's probably more of a mindset thing. You're right. In the Valley, like, everyone's surrounded by each other, so that seems to be a hub for entrepreneurship and innovation. And we have that here, but it's just a lot smaller, in my opinion.
Yeah, remember, we've done things in slightly different ways. In America, you might create PayPal. Yeah, but that fixes a problem in their banking system where lots of people still use checks, and whereas here we've got open banking, where customers, compared to other countries, customers have a really amazing experience of transferring money between their accounts and to each other. And that's created a whole load of innovation. So again, it's kind of like different. And the kind of problems that are solved by some of the unicorns that have created in America, in a sense, have been solved through different means here.
Yeah. Okay. You mentioned PayPal just then. I asked you about Sadiq Khan a second ago.
Yeah.
PayPal's creator is Mr. Musk, Elon Musk, or one of the founders anyway. What's your opinion on Elon Musk? Quite a controversial guy, obviously.
I mean, I think, he's rightfully got into hot water recently over his comments. Okay. And has had to make amends for them. I mean, personally, I find the user experience of his now main product, X. Twitter, to X even, to have, substantially diminished recently. Okay. I mean, I find it as a way of engaging with people now like almost useless. And I think I think there's a challenge in the sort of direction of that company from something that was a quite well-known and fairly, kind of well accepted and respected product. The direction of travel in which it's gone, where people are actually just exiting it because either they don't agree with values or they find the user experience much diminished. I mean, the difference in feed experience is very, very. It's very changed since the change in ownership.
Do you mean in terms of like more bots or more views that you don't agree with, or what do you mean?
It's just just random spam, really. So it's not even a kind of like opening up. It's just it's really just sort of it's not the same experience that people kind of had grown to know, trust. Not saying that there weren't challenges before.
Hey, this podcast is brought to you by WeLoveAlpha.com. If you're looking to grow and hire and scale your software engineering team in the UK, then go to WeLoveAlpha.com to hire the best software developers on the market. Everything across Java to C# to PHP to Python to React and Angular and mobile and more. Go to WeLoveAlpha.com to hire the best software engineers in the UK now.
I've watched a lot of your interviews where you talk about fixing the plumbing.
Yes.
Right. I think that's a great term. I like that. But what do you mean by it? Because it's like your job, right? You say your job is to fix the plumbing. That's kind of what you're here.
I mean, what I mean by fixing the plumbing is that if we really want to be prepared for AI and we really want to make good on politicians' commitments to use AI truly for civic benefit, citizens' benefit, rather than consumer benefit, then there are a number of things that we need to do. And in a particular role as a city, there are... It is not acceptable as a city that as we inherited a vast kind of copper connectivity legacy. We need to have full fibre to propel London into, the 5G and further network age. That's really, really important. Fix the plumbing, number one. We need to make sure that we can share data better. So that's open and non-open data, so that people can create great things, great data services and digital products and services from that data. There are challenges sharing public data that are due to technology, due to culture, due to administration, and due to kind of lack of support from government that could be truly beneficial to citizens. We also talk about fixing the plumbing in terms of innovation and collaboration.
Sure.
I'm CDO of London, which has 32 boroughs, each with their own independent kind of IT and innovation plays.
Oh, yeah.
So for me, fixing the plumbing there is to find a way in which we can bring those CDOs of each of the boroughs together and say, how can we do more together? So that's why we've established an organisation called the London Office of Technology and Innovation. Now works with 28 out of the 32 boroughs. So we can have that conversation. We never had that conversation before. And I also think there is, on the more technical side, there is a big fixing the plumbing issue which holds back the use of sharing of data legitimately, which is wrapped up in the legacy IT that sort of dominates many of the things that local government does. If you went into housing, social care in its various forms, planning and other elements of local government, those verticals are dominated by one or two major suppliers. There's very limited competition. There's loads of vendor lock-in. There's little to no innovation in those areas. The data isn't stewarded very well. Local authorities sign contracts that ultimately mean that they are often charged for extracting their own data to use it for purposes other than the original business purpose. So if you were thinking about transactional data that you might want to use to understand not just the nature of that transaction,
Sure.
but for poverty, for the development of a new service, that comes at a price. And so these restrictive contracts, the dominance of these firms that are basically headed up by sales teams, have lost their original innovative spark when they came onto the scene, 10, 15 years ago, and are now holding back, I think, public service innovation in this country. So it's quite a big challenge. So what I call fixable plumbing is many things, ranging from connectivity to joining up data, collaboration, and indeed this big challenge of legacy IT. which actually isn't just a public sector concern, it also impacts the private sector as well.
There's a lot of plumbing, man.
There's a lot of plumbing in
like
there.
Mario.
Yeah.
You started, the first piece of plumbing that you talked about there was AI. I briefly spoke with the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, at London Tech Week a few months back, just up the road, and he talked about how AI on stage with, I think it was with Demis from DeepMind, and he's obviously really obsessed with it. I know he's made a £100 million AI task force, which Ian Hogarth is running. What are your views on artificial intelligence? It seems like 100 million is a tiny number for us as a country to invest into it, as opposed to like Microsoft just making a 10 billion investment just in one company and into OpenAI, right? And we're talking about doing that as a nation. Surely there's a lot more that we could be doing. It's a good starting point, but what are your views on AI, and what are your views on how, I guess, the Prime Minister or the UK in general is going to seize upon this as opposed to the US?
Yeah, I'm pro AI. In its various forms. The purist would say AI has been around for a long time. Using machine learning as a city, certainly automation and so on for a long time. I think the government is right to obviously invest in AI capability. When I looked at their microsite that they'd spun up to say do the announcement. It did make me think, however, that they've fallen into that old trap of, which is quite common for this government, to kind of refer to, when they think about government, what they mean is Whitehall. Where all the data is that will transform people's lives is held by local government right across the country in various silos. So the government's making this investment in AI in government for Whitehall, not for government as a whole. And so what's lacking in their announcement is how do we free up that data that's held by the many local authorities across the country providing the same kind of services, often locked into these IT contracts, and share that and use that for the things that are truly going to transform our society. And let me give you an example. One of the big challenges, and actually one of the things that really mobilises the public and private sector leadership at the moment, and they're willing to discuss data sharing on this voluntarily right across the board, is climate change mitigation or net zero. But just taking net zero targets will only be achieved through the use of technology and data. Meaning not just through deep analysis of what the problem is, but by new business models. And new business models that appeal to people to say, yeah, I'll put a bit of my own money into that because I can see the return. It means something to me. I agree that as a householder, it's right for me to stump up a bit of money each month for the next X number of months to get solar panels and insulation because it's part of a business model that someone else is investing in and the government's investing in, so that we can make this change happen. At the moment, to retrofit London will cost, and I think this is a conservative figure, at least £100 billion.
Bloody
right?
Okay.
Less than 1% of that will come from government. Okay. So the rest of it will come from somewhere else. So that's where we need data, design, new business models to come up with the solution. And that's the kind of power of computers, the power of deep learning and other things to model what it would take for us to meet that target and what people have to do. So I think it's really good, just go back, it's really good that they've invested the money. One of the challenges with AI, it sounds like a small amount of money if it's just completely open-ended.
Sure.
But if you're saying we're going to test something end to end, we're going to redesign an entire process or create a new one for a purpose, then it starts to make sense.
Hey, really quick video just to give you a free subscription to Coder magazine. Coder is the #1 publication for all the latest tech news, expert insights, and exclusive industry interviews. With Coder, you get the inside scoop on what's happening with Elon Musk, with Bill Gates, with Jeff Bezos, with Mark Zuckerberg, and so much more. So if you work in the technology industry, then I'd highly recommend that you give Coder a read today. Just scan the QR code on the screen for free access now, or go to welovealpha.com/magazine to get your free subscription today. AI, I agree with what you're saying. I mean, like the amount of data that's out there, we really should be using AI to capture all of it and get some really interesting and good results from that. A lot of people are worried though that the more data that you give to AI systems and the smarter that they become, there is a chance of them basically becoming sentient or self-aware. I know you like it's Asimov's books.
Yes.
So he's done stories in the iRobot. Was it?
And his short stories.
Yeah. So I mean, look, right now it's a sci-fi idea, but is consciousness uniquely biological? Or if you give enough computing power to something, does it become awake? I mean, that is like the ultimate question when it comes to AI. Do you think AI could become self-aware, could become conscious, could become sentient?
I mean, flippantly, if there comes a day where Camden Council becomes conscious as opposed to Islington Council, I'd be interested to hear what their exchange would be, or London versus New York. I don't know the answer to that question. People say that sort of thing is very, very far off. Yeah. What I would say is that, we can talk about generative AI in a second, but where I see the application of AI actually happening, it's not in a kind of, as I say, open-ended, pour all the data out and then kind of outcomes sort of some semi-conscious, thing. It is more like a collection of really useful use cases. So we are seeing the use of AI in Transport for London to do things like help us understand movement around the city. To help us understand using computer vision, we can instead of like having human counters on a rainy Saturday sitting on a footbridge overlooking a road, counting cars and bicycles, we've got computer vision just going, that's a bicycle, that's a scooter, that's a horse, that's a bus, and doing a much more accurate assessment of mobility. I mean, these things have to be done when you're running a city to actually just understand and model movement. We see the phasing of traffic lights by Transport for London using machine learning to understand and to alter timings on crossings and things like that. When it becomes congested, use AI to scrape social media to understand when a major incident happens. In local authorities, we're seeing AI being used to tackle fly tipping in South London. An amazing program which dealt with a major issue and gripe that people have and found out the answers to it. On the one hand, it was because of poverty. On the other hand, it was also due to an illegal group of people going around and making money. It happened at a certain time of day that hadn't been anticipated. It allowed enforcement and other action to be taken. So there are like a range of cases where AI in its various forms is being used, but they are, what I would say is if you sort of move away from the science fiction, they are purpose-led cases. Like, this is the purpose. We want to tackle fly tipping. We want to understand, who's using our roads, and enabling us to do that much more efficiently and effectively than ever before. Now, when it comes to generative AI, which really got people going over the summer, then I think we're still on a journey on that one. I mean, certainly some local authorities have been experimenting with generative AI for things like assistance in translation services, because you've got many community languages being spoken, and maybe responses, suggested responses to letters and things like that. But I think that there's, one has to be like a little bit careful in local authorities. I heard of an example the other day of some government department trying to use generative AI to collate consultation responses. Well, is that legal? Is it not part of the process that a human being actually read a consultation response? Is that not judicially reviewable? So I think, there's certain things where I think there needs to be a sense check before people go down that road. The most immediate issue that we've had with Gen AI, in a sense, has not been so much about the large language model end of it, which in my understanding is, still, it's definitely still being developed. There are definite challenges there. It's more costly to do, and you've got to, bring more people together to do it correctly. In the world of audio and images, however, we've got deepfakes, we've got very easy to create and manipulate products and services coming out there. The biggest immediate threat was seen by our creative workers in London. 1 in every 5 people in our city is either employed by the creative industry or employed in a job linked to the creative industry. So we started a major program when they got concerned about people's copyrighted works being exploited by AI products without any recompense. That's a challenge. And then the second challenge is the community cohesion one. Not so much, although there has been examples of this, of deepfakes being used in moments of crisis or for political ends. But it's almost like the consequence of the ability to have it. If the public, who are becoming increasingly aware that a deepfake is easy to do, think that it could be done, then where's their trust in all news sources?
How long do you think that will be? Like until, because right now deep fakes are there, but they're a little bit. You can tell that they're not quite real. Maybe to me or me and you watching it, we could probably notice. Just somebody sitting on a bus scrolling on TikTok, they might not be able to tell. But how long do you think it will be until anybody can just create a video of anybody saying anything? And I'm screwed because there's hundreds of hours of me doing podcasts. But like that's going to be really, really difficult for governments. If I can create a video of Rishi Sunak saying, or Sadiq Khan saying anything, and nobody will know if that's real or fake. And then who announces if that is real? And then who's fact checking the fact checkers?
And I think lawmakers have a really difficult role here. So my answer to that is that what society normally does when what society has done historically when there is there are questions to be resolved is they set up institutions. So we set up the Electoral Commission to make sure that elections are run fairly and to produce and not just set the rules, but to produce guidance to steer people in the right direction. We have civil society, and so there is there's a gap which no doubt is being filled and will have to be filled, where actors step in and produce guidance and steer platforms and content creators and others in the right direction. Of course, there's a role for legislation, but you can't just legislate without that kind of middle layer of institutions saying, we've researched this, we've found out this, therefore the law must change. It took 3 years for the Online Harms Bill to make its way through, and rightfully it passed legislation on criminalising deepfake pornography and and protecting children, and so on. That's the priority, and the evidence base was there. But then there's a kind of unfinished business bit about deepfakes being used for misinformation.
Yeah.
Now, you can't just immediately go in going like, I'm concerned, therefore we should legislate. You need to ensure that there's the evidence base. And there's sort of two aspects to this question, because one is the creation of the deepfake itself, which will become more and more, lifelike and accurate. And the other one is the propagation of it, which is via the social media platform. And I still think there is a big question to be had of social media platforms, of allowing access to independent researchers to see how messages are amplified within their platforms, so that we can understand the nature of how misinformation is spread. Because the suspicion is, in certain cases, that the platforms themselves are being manipulated by people who know how to game them. So it just takes the combination of the two entities, the misinformation producer and those, to amplify and spread misinformation. Now, this is all, well beyond my pay grade, because ultimately these are matters of law and freedom of speech and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But from a city perspective, we have a slightly different role, because like cities in the UK don't really make laws.
Yeah.
We are responsible for community cohesion, so it is right for us to actually have a place in this discussion and debate around what government, or making government aware of the dangers, and not just, allowing them to sort of be in this space of like, it's nothing we can do, it's all free speech, when in fact it could have very, very damaging real-world consequences for people and communities.
Sure. I mean, there probably is a balance to be found, right?
Absolutely, with everything, yeah.
What about before, we talked about AI for a bit there, just before we had AI, the big theme of the tech headlines was the metaverse.
Yeah.
That's what everyone was focused on.
Yeah.
It's now become old news. Well, it's not old news, but it's become less on the headlines than AI is. Well, what are your thoughts on VR, AR, mixed reality? Do you see us all living in some kind of digital world in a couple of years? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think AR VR will. I think the uptake of that is coming very, very soon. We'll see it in our public realm. We'll see it in culture. There's an extension. Obviously you've got esports and the games industry. So I think it's a kind of very live and exciting thing development thing to happen. It's definitely like an emerging technology that will probably land sooner than most. On the metaverse, which is a kind of, it's interesting when you talk to people about the metaverse and talk to people about augmented or virtual reality. Sort of like some people like exactly the same thing. As with anything, definitions in this area are quite fluid.
Yeah.
I mean, on the metaverse in relation to cities, I was recently over in Barcelona Smart City Expo, and South Korea have been making quite a big play around the metaverse and government. So they created virtual town halls. They've created services like metaverse in the metaverse, and they brand it metaverse. And that's really interesting. And then I kind of look at the nature of it and think, okay, is that something that one wants to replicate elsewhere? And undoubtedly, I think there are benefits of having virtual walkthroughs and interactivity in public services. I think it helps people with certain health conditions and can be extremely interactive. But a large part of what the South Korean model was about gamification and tokenization. It was kind of like a social contract thing.
Yeah.
You do a bit of recycling, you get X number of, tokens, and you can use those tokens at a shop in order to get 10% off something or get something. Now, let's set aside the metaverse and think about that social contract model, because that's the thing that lies behind their approach to a smart city. And that's something that they've kind of democratically decided to do, and is, you know, and is right in the context of that city being deployed. I don't think that model necessarily is something that we here would follow.
We're two stubborn British people.
It may well be that. It may well be that we want to have a much more discrete incentivization for us to do things, rather than having a full model within one platform where you might feel that, you know, someone knows that you've done recycling and you've done this and you've done that, and it's all part of a wider kind of package for you as a citizen. I don't think that sits very well with us, and so I would just kind of go back, you know, I was talking to someone who's classified smart cities across the globe, and he's sort of classified a kind of South Korea, China model, Singapore model, as a sort of safe smart city model, where you have very much a social contract based approach. You've got kind of European GDPR, so kind of purpose-led approaches. So more like a smart city would look more like a collection of use cases, rather than something that's, you know, connected in one big, you know, sort of harvesting platform. And then you'd have a kind of an American model, which you see cities often do quite big deals with particular tech firms and such like that. So I think you're beginning to see a kind of differentiation between sort of continents on how they're approaching smart cities. And so that kind of metaverse thing very much spoke to me as part of this kind of social contract tokenization model, which I don't think kind of necessarily flies here.
Prior to the metaverse, the former hype was really like blockchain and crypto. Tokenization, sort of be, you know, tokens, crypto, there's some connection there, but I know you mean it for a slightly different purpose. But what are your thoughts on Bitcoin, on crypto? I mean,
I just didn't get involved in there was a very big moment of hype where some mayors of US cities were taking part of their salary in crypto and all of that, and then there was NFTs, and it's, you know, and obviously there was the whole blockchain push before that. I mean, fundamentally, what is the problem that you're trying to solve here? And I think I've always been against whether it's in smart cities or with other forms of technology, which also include AI. Let's just be wary of the kind of solutionist tendency that, you know, we don't know quite what it's going to be used for, but it's really great and it can do loads of stuff. Quite often what people like is to do something simply and really well, you know, and make their lives easier. And so I was always a little bit unconvinced by the total proponents of blockchain, partly because I don't have a PhD to fully understand it, and that always kind of warns me off. It also warns me off investing in some stocks and shares as well, you know. You know, but fundamentally, I think that we need to start with, you know, what's the user need, what's the problem we need to solve here, and then kind of build from that.
Do you think the UK would ever adopt its own, you know, digital currency?
I have no idea.
Do you think that'd be a good idea?
I have no idea. I literally have no idea. I mean, that would be something for the Bank of England, wouldn't it? Yeah. I mean, I suppose if I was CDO of, like in New York, they've got much more kind of proximity to their financial district than we do in London in terms of policy and things like that. So they would have, you know, opinions on such matters. I do think that, you know, there is it's not so much as the question of a digital currency, but I do think issues like understanding, you know, people's digital identity is really is becoming a fundamental question. Having something that one would be able to go through various public services in life without having to go through the same forms over and over again.
Like WorldCoin, have you seen the orb that can scan your eye?
I have not seen that. No, I'd remember it if I had, though. Yeah.
It's Sam Altman, OpenAI. He invested in a company which creates a digital passport for you.
Right.
He's trying to do it before a government does, in my opinion, because a lot of people are worried that if a government has a digital, I mean, they already have passports, right? But a digital passport, similar to what we've seen in China, how they could turn off your bank account if you said something that you disagreed with the government on something.
That sounds very West Coast.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. What are you? Let's finish off with something more upbeat.
Yeah.
But what are you excited about going into 2024? I think we'll publish this either at the end of this year or early next year, just depending on our schedule. But we've talked about AI, we've talked about the metaverse, we've talked about blockchain, you talked about smart cities, you talked about big data. What are you really excited about tech-wise going into next year? Like what innovation is getting you really interested right now?
Well, for us at the City Hall, we'll be launching our new data platform, which is called Data for London. It effectively acts as a kind of library service for where the city's important data is. Yeah, so just like, back in the old days, you'd go along to a library and you'd want to find out where a book was. This index will say, with the data that we hold already, this data is open data, it is held over there, so people can access it. Or this data for those non-open data sets that we hold that require a data sharing agreement is held over there, like the archives. And, you need to do this in order to get this agreement in order to access it. So we're kind of flipping that idea of a kind of all harvesting smart city sort of data store around. Yeah. And instead seeing us as we're actually governed, that there are many data holders in London, and that we need to combine our data for specific purposes, so let's say net zero, climate change mitigation, or whatever, anti-poverty. Here's the data, here's how easily you can bring it together. So by kind of creating a big register or library of the metadata, so the description of the data, we can create a better foundation for us creating good digital and data services. And we think this is a kind of lower cost, more effective way of opening up data than, some of the big promises that have been kind of put on us by firms saying, create a big smart city platform. This is what you can do. But fundamentally, it's like what you do with data, how you talk to citizens and other users on data is driven by the purpose you want to use it for. Yeah. And we think from this we'll be able to create quite a lot of really useful and helpful services and insights that can help us, especially around net zero.
I'm all for that, open sourcing it and making it available. Yeah. Transparency is key, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's not all open data, but it's the platform will tell you where that data is. So really excited about that. I mean, obviously next year in the UK is an election year, so there could be a change of government. I think that there's a real opportunity with the new government to look again at how we see data, in government as a whole rather than Whitehall to transform public services. I think this government's just missed a big trick. It just didn't see it, of how, when you talk about the power of AI to transform public services, how you've just got to see the bigger picture of like where services are experienced. And so they haven't been across that at all. But they've made investments. Maybe they'll change their mind. But I think there's an interesting political moment coming up in this country.
Cool. All right. Theo Blackwell, thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for watching this podcast. Make sure that you like, subscribe, follow, comment, etc., etc. And I'll see you in the next episode.